So to sort of sum up things, essentially this sort of relationship of dominance can be shown by size. So the larger of two spaces feels like the most dominant of the space. It's the focus of the space. It has the most weight. Space positivity has a big role to play. In a case like this is actually opposite of the space positivity show or example I showed earlier, where it almost feels like here, this actually, the more negative space is the satellite space to the larger, more well-defined space. Circulation has a big role as far as dominance goes. In this case, we have two rooms that are sort of the same size, but because this middle room right here, this outer room, has more connection to sort of circulation, it becomes sort of the more dominant of these two spaces. And but then you have this hallway, which has quite a bit of dominance of its own because of the fact that it is the circulation. So I could see several rooms coming off of this sort of dominant hallway. And then the hallways, a lot of times hallways and pathways, as we'll talk about later, are sort of the dominant organizing factor in building and structures. Another factor of dominance can be in utilities. So if you were exploring a game space and you came across two rooms, one has just some ambient objects of some sort of globe or some object, some random object, as opposed to a toolbox, something that you can use in gameplay. The gameplay space that has more utility is going to be the more dominant of the two spaces. And the same goes for sort of identity. If you have a game that has a lot of sort of storage rooms, but it does not have a lot of sort of like artist studios, this is going to be sort of the focal space between the two. And really, this comes down a lot to kind of how we talked about weight in image or point of view composition. So when we're talking about spatial composition, this weight definitely comes into play. Size, the perceived mass of the space, the spatial depth, how large it is, the detail that's put into it, familiarity, color, all this sort of are very analogous to sort of weight in an image composition. And much in the same way, a layout can also be out of balance because of the weight of the different spatial structures. So we could have a dead space that feels like it has a lot more weight than is necessary for its purpose. So if, just as an example, we have this sort of empty space over here that doesn't really seem like it has much purpose or utility. It's just kind of there, and it's a distraction. It distracts away from sort of the main purpose of whatever this cluster is. Another way a space can be out of balance is through competing spaces. So as an example here, where we have this is sort of the main structure, or the main dominant space, because this sort of sets up where the goal is and the directive of the space. And you have this space over here, which maybe has a much stronger sort of landmark. It feels like this space has a lot more dominance than is really necessary for what the purpose of this space is. It sort of puts out of balance sort of the relationship of the entire cluster, and takes basically the player diverted from the goal of the gameplay in here.